Hello there YouTube, my name is Chuggy and today I am playing some Battlefield Hardline Beta, playing Heist on high tension. And today guys, I have got a gameplay and commentary for you, as you can probably tell. Today I'm going to be talking about my experiences so far with the Hardline Beta, my thoughts about it, and well, if it has lived up to or addressed any of the concerns I had from my last video and last commentary, but also to briefly touch on what I thought of E3 this year. Obviously all just summed up and finished just a few days ago, so my impressions and things of that. First and foremost though, let me just mention the gameplay. Obviously this is Hardline Beta, it is beta, not final representation of quality, and you will see a few moments where little glitchy things happen, you know, RPGs going through terrain or other such random things. I'm sure those will be ironed out for final release. But the first thing I'd like to talk about is my concerns, which I kind of mentioned in my last video, which was with Hardline coming out, and apparently it looks like EA wanting to bring out a Battlefield game every year, my fears for the franchise, and moreover the fears for Hardline, that it just wouldn't work, it wouldn't quite translate properly, and that it's really just a cash grab, as we've kind of seen with Activision and the Call of Duty series. Just release one every year and people will buy it. Well, we're seeing how that goes for Call of Duty these days, but anyway. I'm pleased to say that Hardline has answered a lot of my fears, and when I say answered, you know, it's kind of sorted out fears and concerns I'd have, that it just wouldn't be a Battlefield experience. It'll just be cops v robbers in the Battlefield kind of pretext of, oh look, there's destructibility, oh look, there are classes. I have had quite a few sort of, if you will, only in Battlefield moments as I've played through. A few of those you'll be seeing in a moment. Where you just wouldn't get situations occurring and things happening in any other first-person shooter, any other game really. And that combined with actually there's a lot of good stuff going on in Hardline has really made me enjoy the experience. So here's what Hardline kind of tried to sort of sell itself on Battlefield-wise. You know, you're escorting objectives and you need to work as a team to get them out. And you know, you wouldn't find any other game where crook has just stolen a load of money from an armoured van. He's got a mate sticking his head out to the side of a van with an RPG blowing up cop cars. Then you got cops chucking themselves in left, right and centre trying to stop the van carrying the loot as it heads towards a drop-off point. You just wouldn't get that in other games, and the number of times I've had little weird wonderful moments like this, it's really made me think, hang on, you know, this is Battlefield, right? This is perhaps an unfamiliar setting, but it's Battlefield. And when those moments happen, they're wonderful, as they are in any Battlefield game, really. But having said this, I am still concerned that Hardline, it's not that it's a bad game, but it's just not a Battlefield game through and through. It is just a first-person shooter with classes and objectives, which, let's face it, when you go through the thick and thin of it, a lot of first-person shooters have, you know, objectives, not necessarily classes perhaps, but, you know, ideas of class-based combat. I think this can kind of be surmised that really the setting and everything else, I guess it still just doesn't sit right with me. It's really just Battlefield modes and concepts just reskinned for the setting to try and make it work and to try and make it, I don't know, novel or different. This particular mode here is called Heist. And you might have been able to kind of gather just by how the game has gone so far that it looks a little bit like Rush, perhaps a little bit like Capture the Flag, and you'd be absolutely right if you were thinking that. You know, the idea is you have two teams, one attacking, one defending. In this particular case, it's crooks attacking two armoured cars with some loot in them, and the cops trying to keep the crooks out. And essentially, once the loot has been secured, you need to actually drive it to, or get it to a location to drop it off and score them. And that, you know, it's fairly similar to Rush, as in you've got objectives which you need to capture and, well, in this case, explode, much like an MCOM, with a slight deviation where, obviously, once you've got the objective blown up, you need to take it somewhere rather than move on to another set of objectives you need to blow up. So, in a kind of crooks v cops sense, this kind of works. You know, you could imagine a load of crooks going around, robbing armoured cars, armoured vans, whatever, and the cops trying to intervene. So I don't really have a problem with that. What I do kind of take issue with, though, is just the scale of it. And that's kind of weird, you know, in a Battlefield context, but for the game kind of to make sense, the crooks, you know, you can't have an infinite number of reinforcements. You actually have 100, as you would see in the sort of bottom left-hand corner, whereas the law enforcement have an infinite number of reinforcements. So that's kind of the trade-off, that, you know, you can't just keep going on and on and on forever trying to take these objectives. So again, kind of like Rush, you've got limited reinforcements. The thing is, though, the scale of it all. We've got a large area here. I mean, this is looks to be an area of downtown Los Angeles completely deserted, and you've got basically what is full-out warfare. And I'm not sure about you guys, but I've never heard of a heist quite like this, where a whole area of Los Angeles, for instance, in this case, has had to be seized and shut down just so crooks and cops can have a big old gunfight. To me, this is just all-out war with a new skin on it, which in a normal Battlefield case would be fine. If you've got the Chinese against the Russians fighting over some strategic area in, I don't know, China, okay, yeah, I can kind of buy that. It's got a bit of rationality about it. For the sake of stealing 2 money bags, all this seems a bit much. And once you start questioning and doubting what's going on, you kind of have other issues with it. So one thing which was touted is the money system, and how that would be the way that you would progress and go through the game. And when I heard that, I thought, oh, okay, they're going to do something Counter-Strikey. Everyone starts off with the same amount of money. You buy weapons, you buy equipment, and that resets at the end of every round. The answer to that is no. As you can see, I started with $99,000. Now I've got just over $100,000. What actually happens is that money is actually XP. It just kind of gets translated into dollars. 1 kill, 100 points. That's $100 for you. And what you can then use that money for is to unlock things. So very much in the style of kind of Black Ops, you kind of got, or Call of Duty Black Ops, I should say. You get XP, you can then unlock anything you like. And so I was kind of disappointed there, because I thought, okay, that kind of adds some, it's a bit different. Not Battlefield, in the sake of, you could have a situation where everyone's got basic weaponry, and as the map goes on, you have harder hitting guys because they can afford to buy armor or big shiny weapons. I don't know. No, it's again just Battlefield class system with weapons and whatnot, which you predefine, you pre-unlock, and that's pretty much that. Now, that's not saying that that's a bad thing, but it's Battlefield, and you would not expect crooks to come into an environment like this, where you're more or equally tooled up to say, the Los Angeles police force with all the resources they would have. And in particular with the numbers, again, 100 100 crooks in a situation like this, you would have thought that the crooks would win out quite easily, because they'd just be able to bring all 100 in anyway. I digress. Once you start, I guess, to get these problems where you start to question yourself while you're there, what your motivation is, the game kind of loses its purpose, its fun. With Battlefield, you're at war. You're fighting for some area, and that's all good. You can kind of accept that as a motive for wanting to carry on. But this, it's just crooks v cops, and I can see myself getting bored of it eventually. Okay, I've played all the maps, there's some subtlety and variation, it's kind of got that Battlefield DNA to it, and you can kind of see where they're coming from, but really all it is Battlefield with a cops versus crooks theme, which, okay, might be interesting for the first few goes, but after you've played it for a while, I don't think you'd go back to it. At least with things like Battlefield 4, or Battlefield 3, or Battlefield 2, or whatever, you have this kind of notion of it's nation v nation, and you're replaying a scenario. This is just some elaborate heist in a large map area, which with a variety of vehicles. You've got civilian vehicles, you've got some more heavily armoured stuff as well. It just doesn't, I guess, sit right with me. So really, the million-dollar question: is Battlefield Hardline worth getting once it releases? Well, it's hard to say, of course. This is being a beta. Things will, I'm sure, change as time goes on. But for me, the big issue I have is its setting. It still does not quite sit right for me. If it was just called Hardline or Cops versus Crooks, I don't think I'd have an issue, because all I'd really see it as is a new first-person shooter from EA to, try and get some of my money to purchase it. But because they put that Battlefield tag on it, I've got an expectation of what to experience. Don't get me wrong, you do definitely see that Battlefield lineage, but to try and make it a part of this Battlefield family, which has got some really diverse and truly epic environments in history and lineage, it just doesn't quite work for me. Not saying it's a bad game, far from it. It's very good, very solid. There's lots of good things to talk about. For instance, gadgets and weapons. I've got tear gas here. I'm wearing a gas mask, so I'm not affected by it. I can effectively take areas and keep enemies out of areas without issue. a variety of gadgets which have also been shown off, things like grappling hooks, things like zip lines which you can use. The weapon balance actually is pretty solid. There's slight issues with balance here and there, but all the weapons that need some skill and ability to use. You wouldn't be able to just fire and have no recoil issues. There is recoil. There's more visual recoil than anything else, to be fair. But there's recoil. All the weapons handle very differently. Even the SMGs and the class handle very differently. There's lots of good things to talk about and say about Battlefield Hardline. But just because I question what's going on in the setting and everything else, I'm not convinced by it. Which is a real shame, because at the core, this is a really very solid team-based first-person shooter. What I'm more reminded of here actually is things like Team Fortress 2, where you do have to work together to take objectives, and if you don't, well, you're just not going to win. So all in all, should you get it? Should you pick it up? I'm going to sit on the fence on this. I'm going to wait, give it some time, see what the betas and things bring, and see what changes, what develops. I mean, that's the point of a beta after all. It's to get feedback and impressions. And all in all, the gameplay is really, really solid. It's just perhaps the setting, the context doesn't quite sit right with me. Perhaps, I don't know, through some changes. I much rather, for example, have 8v16 cops, 8 crooks v 16 cops, and make the crooks pretty powerful, because then at least you have it's a bit more believable. You've got 8 criminals, and that could prove a bit more interesting, and I'll be more interested in that, I guess. Anyway, I digress. It's a solid game, do not get me wrong. Is it a Battlefield game? It definitely have the moment, or definitely has the moments, and definitely has the kind of feel, but it's not Battlefield on a Battlefield I recognise, I guess, and that's an issue for me personally. Anyway, I'll digress there. That's my thoughts on the beta. At this phase, it's a closed beta. I don't think there are any more codes floating around that easily, but I'm pretty sure that there will be another beta in the near future. So if you want to give it a go, there are plenty of people streaming it, and I'm sure you'll have the opportunity to jump in eventually as well. So yeah, it's solid. It's just missing that final little bit of something which normal Battlefield has. This just doesn't for me. Anyway, enough about that. Let me just briefly mention E3 before I run out of gameplay here. This year for me, E3 was the year of nearly. All conferences, all the games which were announced were solid, but none of them had that killer edge. I think a good example of this was the Microsoft conference. They had a great conference, much better than last year's. All about games, talking about this and that, and they had some good, strong, but safe announces. Oh look, we've got the Halo collection, all the Halos on Xbox One. Great, the Halo guys will be loving that, but it's nothing new or interesting. It's nothing, say, tempting me as a PlayStation owner to buy an Xbox One. Likewise with Sony, they've got, oh look, we've got this, we've got this, we've got this, all solid PlayStation games, a new Uncharted, some talk and whatnot of things to do with, things like GTA 5, that got shown off, Metal Gear as well, but it's all getting safe Sony stuff, right? So yeah, and the same with Nintendo, showing off more IP that it knows will do well. I guess I was looking for a little more risk, or a little, just kill a blow to sort of swing the momentum of E3 in one company's direction over another, but oh well. Not to say there's not interesting stuff. Rainbow Six Siege blew me out the water. It's just that I think I was perhaps expecting a bit more, who knows. Anyway, this gameplay is wrapped up. That was unfortunately a loss. The cops did well there to keep us out of that final objective. And yeah, Battlefield Hardline, it's not a bad game, it's just not Battlefield to me. So anyway, guys, I'd love to know your thoughts and impressions on Hardline. If you're in the beta, or if you have any questions, I'll try and answer those where I can. But as always, thank you very much for watching. I've been Chuggy, and I'll see you next time out on the battlefield.